Hi, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Sherri Faust, and this is another edition of the Mayor Minute. Today, I have a guest with me. This is Sherrie Faust. Welcome, Sherri.
Thank you.
Sherri is the environmental health educator for the St. Clair County Health Department. So I always like to start off by asking, tell me a little bit about yourself, your education, work experience, that kind of stuff.
Okay. I live and work in Port Huron, and I've been with the St. Clair County Health Department for 17 years now, I believe, in the Environmental Health Division, doing water quality programming for the county. So manage all the water quality programs that touch the lives of residents in St. Clair County. And I have a background degree in natural resources management, and that's what brought me into this field. And working for the St. Clair County has been a great experience.
Where'd you go to school?
Michigan State.
Michigan State. Good, good. Where is environmental health located?
So environmental health is one of the divisions of the St. Clair County Health Department, which is located in Port Huron. We touch on anything that improves the environment, which in turn improves the lives of residents of St. Clair County. So you think about our soil, our air, our water, or our environmental aspects that we have some touch point on, control on, oversight on. If we want a healthy population, we have to have a healthy environment. So it's one of the divisions within the St. Clair County Health Department.
And your office is located?
In Port Huron.
You are in Port Huron. So what do you have over at Eddy Elementary?
That is Friends of the St. Clair River's office.
Okay.
Is
But
in
is
St.
that
Clair.
That's a section of you?
Yeah, so that's another hat, essentially, that you could say that I wear. I'm co-founder and president of Friends of the St. Clair River, and actually this month, July, is Friends of the St. Clair River's 15th anniversary. We were formed 15 years ago as an environmental nonprofit. We're the area's largest environmental nonprofit, and started because there was no environmental nonprofit in St. Clair County 15 years ago, and I helped establish that to complement the work that goes on at the St. Clair County Health Department in the Environmental Division. Often government needs a nonprofit to work with in order to get grants, get funds, do environmental restoration work, and then vice versa. An environmental nonprofit often needs a government agency to work with for their access to resources and things like that. So I'm able to leverage the government environmental field and the nonprofit environmental field to elevate both missions and do greater environmental work for the county.
Nice, very nice. So you are part of the health department, right?
Yes.
But two separate entities.
Correct.
Right, okay. And do you do any kind of inspections?
The health department does, yes. So part of that work looks like septic system, and wells, drinking water wells, food, anything that's a restaurant or food truck based.
I know that well.
Yes, you would.
Yes, I would.
Tattoo parlors,
Oh.
pools, daycares. So there's quite a few things that all touch on environmental health.
Good. So let's get into some good stuff. I'm very excited about the Bridge to Bay Trail, right? For those in our audience that don't know, we have a trail system, and correct me if I'm wrong. Some of it is old train track, correct?
That would be part of it is, yes.
Part of it is,
yes.
yeah.
I was going to say the Wadhams to Avoca Trail
Yeah.
is an old rail to trail, but also yes, part of the Bridge to Bay Trail down here in East China, in China Township and Marine City, is also old rail to trail.
So the goal was to connect, obviously, bridge, meaning the Blue Water Bridge, to the bay, Lake St. Clair, Anchor Bay, by a bike path.
Correct.
Which can be biking, walking, well, basically biking and walking.
Yeah, we could call it a multi-use trail.
Yeah.
Whether you're a runner, cyclist, dog walker, stroller walker, and it's really even beyond the Bridge to Bay Trail. It extends all the way up to Lakeport State Park, to Algonac State Park, and even beyond that. So you can think of it as Bridge to Bay. You can think of it as park to park. It's over 50 miles.
Nice.
Of trail that St. Clair County Parks and Rec department had that vision 20 years ago, and they got this project going, and they've been the visionary, the developers of this trail. St. Clair County Parks and Rec has. So the project has been in the works for 20 years. Right now, only about 50% of the trail's on the ground, so about 26 miles are on the ground, and we're in this final push, really making a strong effort to connect and complete the remaining gaps in the trail. So you really can go from Algonac State Park to Lakeport State Park, or from Bridge to Bay.
Right, without going on a road.
No, you will go on a road. So that's the
Okay.
unique part of the Bridge to Bay Trail. It's a very urban trail. If you want a very rural experience, which is typically your rail to trail, there are other parts of the state that have that, or the Wadhams to Avoca Trail is a great example of that. But the Bridge to Bay Trail is meant to get you into downtowns, get you along the waterfront. We have 7 beautiful coastal communities along the St. Clair River, great for freighter watching, great scenery. We want to get cyclists on that trail downtown. So that might look like a shared path on the road. It might look like a cycle lane on the road. But right now, the Bridge to Bay Trail bypasses a lot of our coastal communities and a lot of downtown, just like here in Marine City. And now Marine City is working very hard to create what we're calling a downtown loop. So you'll still be on the Bridge to Bay Trail, but you're going to be on the downtown loop of it, so that you can go shopping, you can go eating, you can get a drink, you can go to the beach. And right now there's no route to do that on the Bridge to Bay Trail in Marine City.
Right.
But that's going to change in the next year or two. We're going to see the landscape change with new trail.
Yeah, and that's exciting because it brings a different different visitor, you know, into the downtown areas, and it does help. It helps because, you know, they might not, you know, stop and shop, because, you know, when you're biking, every pound on your bike makes a difference, especially if you're going to do any kind of long distance ride. But you can always kind of like get a flavor of the town and then come back and stay. You know, stay in place, so to speak.
Yeah, so maybe you're camping at Algonac State Park and you got your bikes with you. Now you can ride up to Marine City and actually grab a bite to eat and get off the trail easily. So it's going to be family friendly. So we want the Bridge to Bay Trail to work for local residents and families to easily get into downtown. So maybe they're only doing a 5 or 7 mile bike ride. But then we wanted to bring those tourists from around the state that want that 50-mile trail experience, and they'll be able to get both. So the Bridge to Bay Trail will offer both those experiences, bringing tourists here, but also just helping local residents and families and nearby campers get into downtown.
Right.
Safely and easily, and ride in town, grab some ice cream with your kids, or go cool off at the beach.
Yeah, that's going to be very, very nice. Because right now, you know, like you said, it does have some gaps in it. You know,
you can't very easily or safely or at all get from town to town to town, to ride from Marine City up to St. Clair, up to Marysville. So the Regional Trails Board is working with over 100 different stakeholders right now in multiple communities, 14 communities actually the Bridge to Bay Trail goes through.
Wow.
To make sure that we can connect and complete those gaps. It's a long process. The reason why about 26 miles are on the ground, because those are the easiest 26 miles to put on the ground. And now we're kind of left with the more difficult portion, so they'll take a little bit more time, engineering, strategy, but we're going to make that happen. So it's going to take a few years, but the goal is to have a completed, connected, comprehensive, cohesive 50-mile Bridge to Bay Trail system. And Marine City was one of the first pioneers of the Bridge to Bay Trail. You have some of the oldest Bridge to Bay Trail in the entire county, almost 20 years ago when the trail was put on the ground. And 20 years ago, trail riding wasn't a way, it wasn't envisioned to get people into downtown. It was to stay on the outskirts of town. And that's where you find the trail today. And now Marine City downtown is much more vibrant and thriving, and we have to get those cyclists and tourists and families into downtown, utilizing all of the great resources and assets and scenery that Marine City has to offer.
Absolutely, yeah. And then cohesive signage throughout the whole trail is coming. Yeah.
Yes.
So it's very easy if you get kind of, you know, you get kind of lost. And trailheads.
Trailheads, we're going to have trailheads, and Marine City now has a kayak launch.
Right.
So that's going to be a dual trailhead. That's going to be a dual bike kayak trailhead, which is really exciting. So there'll be comprehensive signage across the whole 50-mile trail for easy wayfinding, easy navigating, and that will start to pop up in the next year too. So you'll see kiosks at trailheads, you'll see signage, there'll be interactive maps, there'll be paper maps, there'll be signs on the ground so that anybody can navigate. And that really doesn't exist right now. So the Bridge to Bay Trail is a little bit mysterious, maybe a little bit nebulous, and we're working to address that. We want to fix that. And so Marine City has been a really active, engaged supporter for the new trail. We're excited. So we're very close to having a preliminary design that we can roll out to residents to get their buy-in and support.
Yeah, yeah. It's exciting to me because I like to bike, you know. And I have a lot of friends that bike. We go downtown and we do we hang out. In fact, we're doing that next weekend, where we just take our bikes out in Detroit and do some of there's a DeQuinder cut and the signage is phenomenal. You can go off and you can do different things, but you always get back on that main trail.
Yes.
So
and you're going to have that here in Marine City
that's
too.
super nice. Yeah.
And part of that is just building a culture for cycling. So while we're building trail on the ground, which is very exciting, we want to build a culture for acceptance of cycling and biking and make people feel welcome and comfortable and familiar with all of that too.
Yeah. And with the way gas prices are going, it's good to get on a bike.
I know.
It's free.
I know.
Well, good. I'm excited about that. And we talked about the span and from where to where. Let's talk about the storm drain painting project, because I was driving through Port Huron. I had to do some work in Port Huron. Then I was back in St. Clair, and I'm seeing people sitting on the sidewalks painting the storm drains. And I think that's pretty cool.
Yeah, so that was an initiative undertaken by Friends of the St. Clair River. So it's a way to get more public art in the community, but we're sending a message about water quality. And we want people to stop and take a look at a storm drain that's in the street that probably gets walked over and looked over all the time. You don't take a second look at it. And now we're having artists paint environmental messages on these storm drains. Messages like, keep it clean. We're all downstream, be the solution to pollution. We want people to know where that water goes when it goes in the storm drain. And in Marine City, it goes right out to the Bell River. It doesn't go through a sewage treatment plant to get treated first. It doesn't get filtered. It just, whatever goes down that drain goes right out to our river. So we want to teach people through art about water quality.
Right.
And just thinking about if we want to have clean water, our drinking water is going to thank us if we just take a minute to think about that storm drain connection to our river. So Friends of St. Clair River has hired 25 artists, and we're doing about 8 murals in Port Huron, St. Clair, and Marine City. So just helping people understand that connection. So St. Clair murals got painted in June. Port Huron murals are getting painted in July, and then we're very quickly going to be moving to Marine City. So about the middle of July to beginning of August, you're going to start to see storm drain murals pop up in Marine City. And it's so exciting. These, so there's kind of 3 prongs to the project. Bring more art to our community. That was one of the goals.
Right.
Number 2 is we establish a mentorship program with novice artists and youth artists, pairing them up with a more experienced artist. So if we want our communities to be more vibrant with art, we have to train young artists and novice artists how to have mural skills. So that's the second component. We have artists all the way down from 12 years old all the way up to 70
that
amazing. Are
amazing.
painting. And then the third is building in that environmental message with it. So we already have families out doing walks as a scavenger hunt, looking for all the painted storm drains in the community. So we worked with Marine City officials to find storm drains that were publicly accessible, very visible, that will get people to downtown, and they're going to be on the Bridge to Bay Trail route. So then as you're cycling, you're going to go by all these 8 community murals that are painted on the sidewalk, and that's really important too.
Yeah.
So the project's been successful working with the artists, working with communities like Marine City, and even the businesses that are welcoming it. And we hope that this is just phase 1 or year 1. We already have artists that are on a waiting list that want to do more. So we're going to start an adopt a drain program with businesses. So if they have a storm drain near their business that they want painted with environmental message, we can pair them up with an artist and do an adopt a drain that way. And then just encourage stewardship of the storm drains too. So again, something that's just looked over, passed by. Now maybe we'll take a little bit more notice and care and awareness.
Yeah. Because I end up doing the walk with one of your representatives. It was me, Holly Tapman, our city manager, Mike Gitrich, our DPW manager, and we walked literally all of downtown Marine City, and pointed out what storm drains, trying to make them nicely spaced, so we can hit town from north to south, and so we picked out 8, I think, and. Yeah, we can't wait for it to get done. I mean, and then we all saw the artist renderings.
Yes.
And what was amazing to me is one of the drawings was from a 12-year-old, and I looked at this thing and I was like,
you would never know.
Yeah, yeah.
You would never know. We were just blown away by the art. We actually got 50 art submissions, and we had to narrow it down to 25. So we made sure to choose youth, and in that youth, there's a couple middle schoolers, are paired up with a more experienced mentor that's going to guide them through that, and then hopefully they'll continue to develop their artistic skills. But how cool to leave your stamp on your town.
Absolutely, yeah.
With an environmental message like that. And so then what we'll give Marine City in the end is you'll have a map or an interactive map where someone can literally walk the path and go check out, find all the murals.
Yeah. That's really, it's kind of weird because it coincides with some other things that we have going on in the city too, because we also are starting a mural project for the sides of some buildings.
Yes.
And so we teamed up with Jason Steyer.
Yes.
From
River Rec Teen
Zone. Yeah. And sorry, I was like, I just ran a blank. And so him and some of his students, I mean, some of these murals that we're going to be putting up are like really cool, with walleye and there's like some cutouts. And so we have one business owner that gave us a side of her building. And instead of just painting the building, we're putting them on boards and then affixing the boards to the building. So, because sometimes you get an older building, you don't want all that crumbling and things. And so that's what we're doing. And then as we were talking about it and sharing ideas and things like that, another business owner says, "Well, I want in.
Yeah, that's
do the side of our
really
building."
neat.
So I can see it. I can see
a
it
chain of
continuing.
events,
Yes.
and how neat to just have all that public art in Marine City. That in of itself is going to draw people.
Right.
So Jason Steyer is one of our advisors on our project. He's so wonderful, and he's the one
He
that
is a
really
great
drove
guy.
home, like, let's develop this youth mentorship program to paint. So River Rec Teen Zone is one of the sponsors of our project, help providing the paint. So we know that all of our paint and products are coming from a good place. It's the same. And then all of the art will get sealed really well on the pavement, so for longevity, and will get sealed every year so that we can get multiple years out of this.
Yeah. Yeah. It's very good because, a lot of people don't realize that when they dump, whatever it is they're dumping into the drain, even if it's just a cup of coffee or something like that, I mean, it goes right into the into the water system.
Right up to the river. So storm water is picking up whatever on the ground, pet waste, oil, litter, trash, fertilizer, pesticides, gasoline. All of that is stormwater, and it's the greatest volume of pollution that goes into our rivers every year, and we have to be aware of that.
Yeah, yeah, and it's important too because we always talk about, like, especially in the fall, keeping those drains clear.
Yes, of leaves.
Of leaves and sticks and
Yeah, a good way to think about it is, and I think some of the artists are painting messages like this: storm drains aren't garbage cans. We can't think of them as a waste receptacle or a garbage can. It goes directly to your drinking water or where you fish or
Right.
kayak. And and it doesn't get cleaned.
Yeah. I can't wait to see it all done. It'll be very pretty. So we talked about the storm drain painting project. Let's talk about the gypsy moth, which is now called the spongy moth program. That kind of happens more in the fall, right? Or is it happening now? The gypsy moth.
So right now, the gypsy moth is so formally known as a gypsy moth, now referred to as a spongy moth. Spongy moth, gypsy moth. Right now is their peak eating of their life cycle. So if you are noticing a spongy moth problem on your property, you're going to notice it now because your leaves are going to be or your trees are going to be defoliated. So we're at that point in its life cycle where they are caterpillars and they are in a feeding frenzy. Pretty soon they will mate, lay eggs. There'll be moths. The moths will lay their eggs, and then they'll be dormant through the fall, and then they hatch in the spring. So right now is when we're kind of monitoring the entire county with St. Clair County to determine where are we going to have an infestation or an outbreak this year in the county. How bad is that going to be? Where are the caterpillars at? Because that determines what the spray program looks like in spring of 2023. So the work to monitor happens an entire year before you actually treat it. So if someone does have a spongy moth caterpillar problem on their property right now, you're going to report it to the county's website, and it's stclaircounty.org/caterpillars. So you just enter your address.
Okay.
You enter what you're seeing, and then that goes into a database where all of those complaints are categorized, cataloged, and mapped. And then the county can spit out that report and see, okay, here's where we're seeing all the problems. Here where we're seeing the infestation. How is this going to be addressed the following year?
Yeah.
But we need people to report. And you can do that until September 15th. After September 15th, the county will not be taking any more complaints for spongy moth for this year. So report your problem now.
So if you live, this is what I always was told to do, and maybe it's wrong. If you live in kind of a rural area, you got a fire pit, and you see what are they called?
The caterpillars are feeding right now. You wouldn't see those, but maybe the egg mass
When
in
they
the
start,
fall.
yes, and they're all, you could see that whitish like web, right? Isn't that what it is?
That's a different caterpillar.
Oh.
So they don't make the webs. Those would be like the fall webworm.
Oh.
Maybe we're thinking that's something else. But the spongy moth will just make a little white egg mass oval shape that's going to be on the tree trunk.
Okay, got it.
And that is what we're looking for in the fall. We're looking for those egg masses, because however many egg masses we find is going to tell us how many caterpillars we're going to have the next spring.
Can you do anything? Can each person do something if you find some of those on your trees? Can you dig them out and burn them? I mean, or is it
Yes, after January 1st. So
Okay.
Before that, in the fall, we need them on the trees in order to count them, monitor for them. And then after January 1st, we encourage residents to just scrape them off into a bucket of soapy water, or you can throw them into a fire, and you kill them that way. After January 1st.
For some reason, I always thought that the gypsy moth were those big webby things that I saw on the trees.
And there's a native version of those and a non-native version of those, so those aren't going to kill your trees either. They can be unsightly or
Right.
alarming, but no reason to be alarmed by them.
So what we're looking for then, you said, is that it's on the tree trunk.
So right now, you're going to be noticing that your trees have probably an oak. They prefer oak trees. Have no leaves. Your trees will re-leaf. They will come back. It's not going to kill them. They're not dead. And then in the fall, it'll just be a white oval-shaped egg mass that will be on the tree trunk.
On the trunk.
And that's what we're looking for in the fall.
Yeah, got it. All right. Interesting.
Interesting life cycle of an invasive species pest.
Right. Right.
And They really don't, it's not really a natural resource disaster. It's more of a quality of life issue. So if you are experiencing a spongy moth outbreak on your property, you probably can't sit outside on your deck for a month. They're all over your porch and patio and car and driveway and RV. So it's really about not being able to enjoy your outdoor property for a period of time. So that's really what drives the control of this invasive species. Trees are gonna survive.
Okay, got it. Any other projects or programs on the horizon that you want to talk about?
You know, I think I forgot to mention how amazing Marine City's beach is.
Oh.
So the health department does water quality
Yes.
testing of Marine City's beach once a week from Memorial Day to Labor Day. The health department sends out a staff person to collect samples there, and they're analyzed in a lab to test for E. coli bacteria. And that is an environmental health issue. If you have that in the water, obviously it's going to make people sick. So we use the E. coli as an indicator to see if there's any harmful bacteria in the water. And in the health department's history of their beach monitoring program, the health department monitors 8 beaches in the county, Marine City being one of them. For about 2 decades now, Marine City's beach has never once been closed due to high E. coli.
I knew that.
So that makes it one of my favorite beaches.
Yes, yes. I think it, well, obviously, because we have a good, well, everybody along the river's got flow, but
It's
we've
flow.
got good flow.
It's flow,
Yeah.
it's the current that helps. It's just a beautiful setting on top of it, but it really is a nice beach. And as far as the health of the water for E. coli, it also does really well.
Yeah, and that's super good to know.
It is good to know.
It is
The
good to
health
know.
department has quite a few resources where people can go to find out what current beaches are open or closed for water quality. You can just go to the St. Clair County Health Department's website or their Facebook page, and you can get that information week by week what the current beach openings or closures are.
If a beach is closed, where is that announced? Do you put a sign on the beach?
Yes.
Yep.
Yes, and it's an advisory. The beach isn't physically closed. You're not going to be kicked out. You're not going to be
Sure.
forced away. It's an advisory that the health department recommends. You don't swim today. You don't go in the water today, based on the results of that water analysis test that we did. And then the health department will continue to collect a sample every single day until that water improves. And typically when we see a beach close at other parts in the county, it's usually just for one day. And the next day it's open again. But again, Marine City hasn't had this problem. But you
Right.
would see a sign posted at the beach that
You'd see, yeah.
advises not swimming.
So when you go and you take a sample, what's the depth that you're taking?
Right, so we go about 3 feet deep. So we're wading out 3 feet deep, and the sample is collected a foot below the surface. So we don't want to be in the shallow part, and we don't want to be in the warm part. So if we go out 3 feet, it's a little bit cooler, and a foot below the surface, it's a little bit cooler, just because bacteria will thrive in warmer conditions. So we take 3 samples at the very north and south end, in the middle,
Got it.
and then they run an average.
So do geese have anything to do
Oh,
with?
yeah.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
Yes, and
Yeah.
there have been some communities in St. Clair County that we saw continually high spikes of bacteria, and we had to do some tracing, figure out where is this bacteria coming from, and often it's always wildlife.
Yeah. You know.
So when people feed ducks and geese,
yeah.
that has really high concentrated amount of bacteria, and if you feed them, they're just going to hang out on the beach, and then that's going to go right into the water. So
Yeah.
one reason we don't recommend feeding ducks or geese. You don't
Yeah.
want them hanging out.
Yeah, and you don't need to here. You know, we have a fantastic waterway. There's plenty of fish and food and, you know, aquatic life and that kind of stuff. You do not need to feed the waterfowl, any typ of waterfowl.
You don't want to train them to hang out on your beach.
Yeah. You know, and geese are a fickle bird, so to speak. At our cottage, we have a tendency to get geese. and we are always shushing them out because we have a beach. It's kind of a private beach, so sometimes there's not a lot of people there, you know, and we tried all kinds of stuff to get rid of those geese. But somebody had told me that, and I don't know if this is true or not, that if you took like a stick or a pole and you just ran a string around it, just like to get them in the chest, they won't cross it. You know, unfortunately, do you want to do that around your whole, you know, property or whatever? But if you do it as a deterrent, they do move on. I mean, they're not dumb. I mean, they will move on and go up somewhere where they are not going to get, you know, hit in the chest with a string, or, you know, we even tried this the dog looking, the coyotes, and it had a real tail and it blew in the wind, you know, and at first they were like, what is that, you know, and then they were like, oh, they figured it out. They figured it out and they came up anyway.
Yeah, so if you give them good habitat, which it sounds like you're giving them good habitat, that's where they want to be.
Yeah.
So you have to create an undesirable habitat, which that string does.
It does. Yeah, it does work. Because we had a big conversation about this not too long ago with some friends, and I'm like, there's no pellets poison. I mean, you don't want to poison anything, but, you know, I said, I'm telling you, it's a string. It's a string on a stick. It's as simple as that.
Yeah.
You know, and they don't want to cross it. Anyway. Anything else we want to talk about?
That's it. That sums up a lot of great projects.
Yes, we have a lot of cool stuff happening.
Cycling trails, storm drain art, water quality, beaches.
Yep.
A lot of neat things.
Spongy moth program we talked about.
Hopefully we'll keep those invasive pests away from everybody so they can enjoy their quality of life on their deck.
Right. Well, I thank you so much, Sherrie Faust, environmental health educator, St. Clair County, for coming on the Mayor Minute. And thank you for watching, and we will see you at the next edition.
Right.
So now we're going to switch gears a little bit, and another subject that was talked about on Thursday's meeting was the Brownfield project for the GEC building. And for those of you out in TV land that don't know what the GEC building is, it's a very large building located between the Riverbank Theater and the Mariner, right?
Yes.
And multiple storefronts and apartments above. There were people that lived in those apartments until a few years ago, and now the building is sitting vacant and is in dire need for some love.
Yeah.
We all, every city commissioner took a tour of that building weeks ago and saw for our firsthand how badly it needs some TLC. So, you know, someone had purchased it. We have an investor that purchased it and is asking for a brownfield. So educate us, Geoff Donaldson, in the most basic of terms, what exactly a brownfield is and why it's so important to have that in like our community. And believe me, it's being used all through St. Clair County.
Absolutely, yeah. Many different places. I've got a list here of all the different places where the county brownfield authority has assisted, and the city of Port Huron actually has their own brownfield authority. We've assisted in the city, and they do a lot of their own work as well. But when you talk about a brownfield, a lot of people think of the typical image that comes to mind, that factory that's sitting there, or a closed gas station that's been closed for years. But a brownfield, it can be something that has known or perceived contamination, and the reason that is if a property is perceived to be contaminated, a lot of times that property is going to sit there for a long time. Nobody's going to take a chance on it, and it's a liability for the community. A lot of things, I say it's a liability for community. When properties go unused, we all know what can happen to them. They can become magnets for things that you just don't want going on in your community. And not to mention, it's not really doing anything for the tax base,
right,
because it's not being productive. So brownfields can be defined in many different fashions, and when you think of it in that term. What can we do with the Brownfield Authority and the brownfield work in the county and with these kind of projects? We can provide liability protection for people who want to invest in property but are concerned about things that they didn't contribute to but exist on that property, and And a lot of people in their right mind won't take a chance on a property if they think that it could be a significant financial liability somewhere down the line if they're held accountable for something they never did.
Right.
So how do you move those properties forward? How do you address that? With the Brownfield program, we can provide opportunities for reimbursement of environmental expenditures to address those kind of problems. So if you want to take a chance on a property, but the cost to address the cleanup on that property, whether the property is orphaned or the contamination happened years ago when nobody even really knew that that was a way of contaminating the property, it was an accepted practice. So those situations, something needs to happen to clean those kind of things up, and that's where the Brownfield programs come into place. It can also provide opportunities for grants and loans, not necessarily on all projects, but certainly with some. It can provide reimbursement for demolition, asbestos lead abatement, and cleanup. And also it can provide assistance with infrastructure improvements. A lot of times, infrastructure might not quite reach a property that needs to be developed, and that can be a deal breaker. I know, for example, one project we're working on, we wanted the community wants some affordable housing. Well, when speaking with housing builders, it's pretty hard to build a house for anything less than $350,000 nowadays. A big chunk of that's the infrastructure, providing the infrastructure, getting it because the city will get it from one point, but getting it from one point here to point over here, there's a significant cost in doing that, getting the water and the sewer, the curb, the gutter, and all of that. Brownfields can assist and help bridge that gap in some situations. And in one community, we're trying to do that creatively so that we can try and make some affordable homes to bring more younger families into an area and maybe help with the school district and enrollment and that sort of thing.
So it's not just development of like downtown buildings. It also is development for housing, as you just said, correct?
It certainly can be, yes.
Yeah.
And we've assisted in many different projects, big and small. I think of the Cavis building up in Port Huron. Many people in this community remember that fondly, and it's going to have a new life here very soon. But it started out its life as a gas station, and there were some issues associated with that. So so that that's an example of a smaller project. And then we've assisted everything all the way up to SMR in Marysville, which is a big project as well. But it was important to assist with that in some regards. It's certainly been a bellwether for that community as far as jobs and investment and improvement of the tax base, et cetera.
That's huge. So one of the things that, and I don't understand this, you mentioned brownfield, and there are some that think that it is a tax break for the rich, and that is completely inaccurate.
Absolutely. I think that is a misnomer out there. So first of all, when we're talking about brownfields, there's many different facets of assistance with brownfields. The county invested, I take that back. The county applied for a grant from the US EPA back in 2010, and we were fortunate to get $1 million. And actually, I have a diagram that would be our dashboard that's dated 2010. And in looking at that diagram, I can see that through that $1 million that was came to the county in a grant and went out through projects, there's 31 phase 1 site assessments were completed, 19 phase 2 assessments were completed, 11 different municipalities had projects that occurred in them. But here's the big number. Out of that $1 million of brownfield assistance, where we helped at the front end of the project, the environmental assessments, $165,692,500 of private investment was leveraged.
Wow.
And those are dollars that very well might never have been brought into the community or spent in the community.
Right.
Because it incentivized people to take that risk on a property that otherwise most might have sat there and continued to rot, stagnate, decrease in taxable value over time. Yeah. And but they've invested in it and driven up the value.
I think it's a great incentive. you know. One of the, another thing that, and again, I'm referring back to, you know, the meeting minutes that I was listening to again this morning. One of the other points that I want to try to make is that it does not take away from schools and millages and the seniors, and it does not.
Absolutely, that's a misnomer out there. So I've got another diagram, I don't know if we're able to bring it up, but it's the tax increment financing diagram that I have. And essentially, with this diagram that I've shared with a lot of people at meetings when that question comes up, I mentioned how we can assist at the beginning of the process with the due diligence. But then once we've identified if there's an issue with the property and there's certain issues that need to be addressed, whether it's contamination or asbestos, or quite simply, like for example, with the apartments in Marine City that we talked about the other night, just obsolescence. The boiler is gone, the electrical's bad, water's come into the building.
The building is horrible.
You feel like you're going to go through the stairs when you walk on them, and whatnot. The cost to bring that back to life is prohibitive for most people. The return on investment wouldn't be there. So somebody owns that property, somebody's paying taxes on it. Let's just say that's, for discussion purposes, they're paying $100 a year in taxes on it. I know that's low, but just to keep it simple.
I wish.
Yeah, to keep it simple, because if I use bigger numbers, I have a hard time with the math. So $100 a year of taxes are being paid on that. A developer will come in that will assess the property. They'll say, I really want to invest in this, but unless we can sort of bridge the gap and address some of those issues, the return on the investment is just not there. I can't spend the money. So with a brownfield plan that gets put into place, we can identify what are deemed to be eligible activities. And the state law identifies what are eligible activities. We can't just make those up willy-nilly. We work with a private consultant who is an expert in this area. We identify that, working with the developer, their engineers, their architects, identify all the eligible activities, and we put a cost to those. So we're not coming in with this brownfield plan and saying we're going to help you put up the bricks and the drywall and all of the fancy accoutrements, but we're going to take care of the other issues and help level the playing field, so then you are willing to make that huge investment to take this property to the next level. So by making that investment with the developer, that property is going to get reassessed, and the value is going to go up quite a bit. Once it's completed, it gets reassessed. There's a new amount of taxes that get created on it. So let's say originally the taxes were $100. The municipality is going to continue to get that $100.
So we continue to get the taxes from that building.
Absolutely.
There is no reduction.
There's nothing given away.
Right, nothing is given away. Right.
If but not for this development, you wouldn't have seen any of the new taxes that are coming out of it anyways.
Right.
However, the new taxes go into a bucket, and as the property gets redeveloped, receipts are generated, costs are incurred. Those get submitted to the Brownfield Authority, and the new taxes, so now instead of the community getting $100, they're getting $1,000 because it's gone up quite a bit. That $900 difference in taxes, those $900 new dollars, those go into a bucket, and the Brownfield Authority looks at all the investment and all the receipts and says, okay, we can reimburse these. We might not be able to do it for year one because it might take a couple years to address it, but we'll take the new increment of taxes, so Community A continues to get their $100, but that new income goes into the bucket. Those go towards reimbursing those expenses to take care of those liabilities, not to build the fancy new project on Main Street or the small little bakery out in the township, but or on an old property, but to address the environmental or obsolescent conditions of the property.
Yeah.
That goes on for a period of time until those eligible activities are taken care of. There's a small portion at the end where the state there's some money goes into a state revolving loan fund, and it's not much, and it amounts to 10% of probably the tax capture to keep these projects going throughout the state and the administration and that sort of thing. And then all of a sudden the community realizes this new jump up in taxes.
Right.
And now instead of getting $100 on it every year, they're getting $1,000 on it every year. You just have to wait a little longer to get to that $1,000 mark because it helps somebody take that risk and address those conditions on a property that somebody might not have been willing to do prior to that.
Right. So if someone doesn't take the risk and come in and, like, Tom did, he bought the building, he's trying to get the brownfield. If that doesn't happen, the building just sits there, because I don't know of any investor that is going to come in and spend millions trying to get that building back up to code and what it should be. And one of the things that I like about what's happening with that building is, living quarters above, right? 6 apartments. That's bringing in 6 new families, new people that are going to be using all of our community services, and then 3 retail on the bottom.
Yeah.
And again, retail, more taxes, better for the community. You got our boaters walking around wanting new shops to go into.
Well, and similar projects we worked on, the other thing that we hear after the project is completed is the business owners up and down that street or in that community now, instead of having a liability next door,
Right.
have something that's really, it's like at your house. If your neighbor starts taking care of their yard, you step it up a bit.
Yeah. Because honestly, I said it already, I was in that building. That building is in really rough shape.
Oh.
I'm amazed that we didn't see critters.
I think I did.
alive critters.
I know where to look.
I think we saw some dead ones. I really like the graph that you showed, because I think that this kind of puts it into perspective. Again, we don't lose any money. We're not losing any taxes. None of our city services are losing any money.
There's no giveaway.
Right.
If but not for this development, there wouldn't have been any of these taxes to even talk about. However, so they're going to go towards reimbursing the cleanup that wouldn't have occurred without it.
Right.
So, you're talking about your project and the importance of reaching out to stakeholders. We were at that meeting. We heard about that, and part of every brownfield plan, there is some administrative costs, very small, but some, and they go into a pool of funds that the Brownfield Authority administers and tries to manage, very responsibly. But we heard about that, and we right away, being familiar with DNR land acquisition projects, I reached out to Mr. Bunch from Six Rivers and said, I believe you might need to complete a phase one environmental assessment. He said, yeah. I said, we can help with that. And he said, you
Very
can.
good.
Excellent. So that's happening. I don't know if you even knew that.
Yes, I did know they were
Yes.
doing a phase 1
Yes.
appraisal, so
Yes.
that's wonderful. That's good. See, but that is government, community, people working together to achieve
Right.
greatness,
Right.
something great. Because it doesn't. It takes a village. We've said that many times, Cheryl, right? It takes
Yeah.
a village, and
Yeah.
it's hard work.
Because what worries me is that, when we continue to say no to projects, development, whatever comes our way, will you get a reputation of being a no town, a no city? Well, let's just pass Marine City right by. We'll go to St. Clair, we'll go back down to Algonac, we'll go to Port Huron, where they have their own brownfield completely in Port Huron.
Or Macomb County.
Or Macomb,
we don't want to lose them there.
Right. And so, when that happens and you have that no reputation, do we have new families coming into town? Do we develop new subdivisions? No, nothing. Nothing happens. And then people start leaving. And then guess what happens to your taxes and your water bills? Right? Mm-hmm. They increase. The more people you bring in, your tax bills go down, your water bills go down, because now you've got more people supporting the infrastructure of a city. Yeah. And I don't think some people realize that. The more you say no, people are not going to want to stay here.
Well, on the flip side of that, this project that you talked about, we spoke of at length at council the other night. The investors in that, it's an LLC that's been formed, and it's a 50-50 partnership, and half of it is a developer who's already had experience in town. And because of the positive experience they had and the assistance they had, they reached out to an out-of-town friend and said,
right,
are you interested? They joined a 50-50 partnership. Had they not been welcomed like that by the community and perhaps given the assistance to make this project work, because without it, I've seen the pro forma, it wouldn't have worked. They would have been in the red for the first 15 years, and who goes into business not to make money for 15?
Nobody does that.
They brought in a friend, and that person's going to be bringing their checkbook into Marine City in St. Clair County and investing in it. And like I said, when they invest in that property, the neighbors take notice, and who knows, perhaps the rest of, not that Marine City doesn't need a whole lot more work because it's looking fantastic, but I think everybody welcomes improvements all the
Absolutely.
all the time.
Absolutely. We have a meeting tonight on for our Economic and Development Board, and behind the scenes, and we can talk about this because it's a public forum for our government. We do have a lot of people that are making the phone calls that I don't understand. I don't think the general public knows that, right? We are trying to, when someone comes into town and, we hear it from another business owner, or they contact the chamber, or they contact the city offices, we really truly try to take that person and their business and put them in a building or find them a spot or something. We do that all the time. And I think that our citizens need to know that, that we are out there working almost on a daily basis, trying to. We've got somebody that wants to do an art center in Marine City, and every time I take my walk or ride my bike around, and I'm like, oh, what about that building? What about that building?
Right.
And I'm calling them. And they're coming like right away. Oh, I didn't even notice that this was here. And it might not be on Water Street, but even the next street, or, on Chartier, on Parker's developing like crazy, And we do have a lot of people that are coming in that want to invest in Marine City. We cannot keep saying no, And, we're told by the developer of this GEC building, this is his last project. He said that in front of every city council member. This is my last project, and just because of the fact that he's a little older and he wants to retire.
Probably wants to start enjoying some of it.
Enjoy some of it, right?
Not being on the phone with all of us all the time, getting the the work done.
Right. So we can't expect these investors to just keep coming back and coming back and coming back with new things when we keep saying no. So. That's the reason why it was so important for me to do this Government Today segment, is just to clarify some things and to put facts out there and to let people know that there are a lot of things happening behind the scenes, and we just want to move Marine City in a positive direction.
Right.
And it does take a village.
It does take a village. We know that.
It takes a village. Thank you, Geoff Donaldson, for coming in. Thank you, Laura Scotch, for coming in.
You're welcome. Thanks for having me.
My name is Sherri Faust, and I'm the Mayor of Marine City. And thank you for joining us for another segment of the Mayor Minute.